welcome to our midweek special, everybody. So today we've got the lovely Limitless Em on. Firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge my sidekick Alex, that she's not here today. So if you saw our Instagram post yesterday, you'll know why. She was really brave and put a short video on explaining why. So Alex, if you're watching tonight, we all love you loads, and I want you to know that we've missed you and we can't wait to have you back on Saturday. Tonight we have the lovely Em on with us. We're going to be discussing a topic that is really, really close to my heart as well. I was a wife of an alcoholic, so I know firsthand how freaking hard it can be. The effects alcohol have on partners, friends, family, they can be huge. We all think this is a really important topic and wanted to talk openly and honestly about it. Also known as Sober Dave's beautiful wife, has kindly come on to share her experiences about being a partner of an alcoholic. So we'll be having a chat with them shortly. If anybody has any questions for Em or anybody else on the panel, please pop them into the chat below. We'll be keeping an eye out on them and we'll try our best to answer all of them. So Em, welcome to your first Sober Sessions.
Thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here.
I bet Dave's more nervous than you tonight.
He's very nervous. He's been should be. Angry. I'm like, come on, we talk about this all the time. Yeah, you have been quite on it.
Yeah.
Like, should I be more nervous because he's so? Should I be feeling more nervous than I am? But it's just a safe space to chat, isn't it? You know,
it is. Yeah. Dave, are you all right to start us off tonight and give us? It sounds bad, this, your side of the story.
Your version of events.
Yeah, your version of events first, please.
Firstly, thanks, guys, for sorting this out. And, darling, thanks for coming on. It's really brave as well. I suppose, really, I need to give a bit of a backstory about myself first. And I lived on my own 10 years in a lovely cottage, and I pretty much made it what I thought was like a castle, but ended up to be like a bit of a prison, really. I used to stock up every night, look forward to a few beers, and quite often get stuck into a bottle of vodka a litre, and 9 times out of 10 I'd finish it. I don't know if anyone knows, but I was on 60-Minute Makeover as a handyman, and we used to go and get drunk a lot on the show afterwards and whatever. And one day we got a job in Wandsworth, and I turned up Wandsworth Common to this house, which happened to be my lovely wife's house. We were doing a makeover on her house, and we didn't know each other at this point. Peter Andre let her out of the car. I looked at Em and I thought, well, that's it for me. And we contacted each other, didn't we? I contacted you on Twitter, and we got chatting, and it was quite a whirlwind romance, wasn't it? And we got together under unusual circumstances, because a day before our sort of first date, Em had an appointment at the hospital, and she phoned me that night and she was diagnosed with cancer. So we met the next day, and it just was an immediate thing, you know, of just do this, you know. And one of our first dates was in the chemo ward, and that's how we got to know each other, you know, on really unusual circumstances. It was quite a fast relationship, and we were in Harrogate one night, and we decided that I could sell my house and set up home together. But what she didn't know was that I had a problem with alcohol. I sold my house literally within the first week, and it was the quickest sale ever. And I just thought, how am I going to deal with my alcohol problem? Because she doesn't really know. I used to make excuses. I used to say to her, like 7, 8 o'clock, I'm a bit tired, darling. I'm going to watch a film tonight. Should we talk tomorrow? Because I knew that I wouldn't be able to talk after the film because I'd be blotto. And I sort of winged it, you know, and I was trying my best to cut down, give up just in time for when I moved in, and I just wasn't succeeding. I was just drinking more, in fact, because I was so stressed. And I made her a lovely dinner a week before I was due to move in, and I just came out of it that I said, darling, I've got something to tell you. And she looked horrified, you know, and I just said, I think I'm a functioning alcoholic. And you know, to be told that when you made a life for yourself with 4 children, you're letting someone into your house, and that must be, I can imagine, absolutely horrific. I moved in, and then of course for the first night I moved in, I had to go cold turkey, which wasn't pleasant. And then the second night, third night, I started to say to her, oh, should we have a bottle of wine tonight, and that. And then gradually I introduced it. And by 2 or 3 months, I was finding my routine, my pattern of actually hiding alcohol. And that's when things started to change, because she realised that things were not what they were meant to be. And problems started happening. We started arguing. I started drinking more, and then it just got worse and worse. Darlene, do you want to come in here?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you kind of summed up the beginning of our relationship, and I think it's kind of, it might sound kind of, well, how did you not see the signs? And I just really didn't. It was a really slow dawning for me, the realization that Dave drank as heavily as he did. I mean, I knew that he drank a lot, but I just viewed him as this big, strong, robust guy who was a drinker, but he just he handled it. So he handled his drink, and I'd been in a situation, my previous relationship, with a very different kind of drinker, a drinker that would disappear, you know, that would not drink every day, but then pop to the shops to get some cigarettes and not come back for 2 days. So, and then would be, without, you know, going into too much detail, would be very, very kind of aggressive and you know, drama. So that's what I was used to. And so, as well as kind of falling head over heels in love with Dave very quickly in very strange circumstances because of my health and because of just everything was so sort of heightened. I just remember, I mean, there wasn't, you know, that classic kind of red flag thing. There was just, I just adored him, and he seemed like the sanest man I'd ever met. And I remember saying to my best friend, God, it's such a relief to be with someone who doesn't have an issue with drink. It was just, honestly, I felt like, God, I finally, you know, found that person who just seems to drink in an enjoyable way. And God, we used to knock it back, didn't we? But because we were in a bubble at that point, we weren't living together. I'd go to his house for a bit of respite from the kids, from the cancer stuff, and he created a haven for us both. So I'd turn up, say, every other weekend, and it was our little bubble, wasn't it? So in a way, then there was nothing to trigger an argument, because we were just in our love bubble. So it really was. I mean, I remember if I would think of the very early signs, it was always, he was all, you know, in that sort of 6, 7, 8 month period of us, even in the very early days of us not living together, but kind of communicating with a lot of text messages and all that lovely those flirtatious early days. He would always want to know if I was drinking that night. Also, you know, I'm on my way home from work, you know, how's your day? Oh, fine, you know, the kids, oh, I'm knackered, whatever. Can I have a little cheeky drink tonight? And it would just be part of our sort of daily conversation. I might say, well, probably not tonight. Oh, go on, why don't you treat yourself to a little? And of course, now realizing, looking back, it's like, oh, you know, he was kind of sounding out what kind of drinker I was. And because I don't know how, it'd be interesting to know, I've never asked Dave this actually, if I was teetotal when we'd met, he might have really not fallen, you know, he might have changed his view of us having a relationship. But it really was a kind of, again, because he moved in and it was absolute kind of mayhem with the kids were a lot younger. Very sort of chaotic household, not, you know, feral, kind of wild, not brilliantly behaved kids, small house, huge adjustment for him. So when I started to sort of see these different sides of him, and I just put a lot of it down to kind of, well, he's changed his whole life. It's an adjustment. And everyone kept saying, well, he's got to adjust. And, oh, okay. And then it was just probably a good 3-4 months in where it was like, but hang on, his personality's changing every night. And we just were having these, I've never experienced anything like it. We were just having these pretty much nightly fallings out about something extraordinarily unimportant. I couldn't understand it. So that was where the kind of classic dog with a bone, the nitpicking would begin. So it really was, it was sort of several months in before I put the two together. And by that point, of course, but it didn't change how I was in love. We were desperately trying to adjust to kind of a massive life change. And I was drinking with you every day. So it was something that continued to also be a lovely part of our relationship. So there was the negative side, which was becoming increasingly apparent. But actually for us as a couple, we still associated drinking with, that's what we did when we got a bit of a babysitter or a night away. It was like, right, let's head to the pub, bottle of wine. That was our mutual wind down time. So it was quite confusing. Should I pause for a bit or should I go? But yeah, so it was a slow realization. But by the time, it really dawned on me, it was too late. And I was deeply in love with him. And overnight we'd entwined our lives financially, on every level with the kids. They adored him. It was like, well, I can't just, we're in this, So
I mean, I have to say as well, and we have talked about this, haven't we, that, and it sounds awful, but it's the truth, and we need to be honest about this, that some of the decisions were made when I was drunk, and we were out in the Harrogate that night, and do you remember, it was a pub quiz night, and we said, right, let's go somewhere else, and we went to another bar, and it's really quiet, and we'd both had a few drinks, and that's when we decided the plot of land on the side of your house, we could do that. And literally Monday I was ringing the estate agent, and for me, moving in with you was an absolutely different experience for me, because for you, I remember you gave me a card, had the key, and it was like, I'm gagging for a bloody drink. I'm really gagging for a drink, and I know I can't have one tonight, and I don't know how I'm gonna. And so all of a sudden, I was put into this reality of almost being thrown into having to be sober, And
what was interesting as well, that last meal we had at your house, and Dave sort of broke it to me. I've got something to tell you. I'm a functioning alcoholic, and I kind of the room spun. It was like, but immediately I decided, I sort of shut that out. I couldn't. It was too enormous for me to comprehend. The sold sign was up outside. He'd packed up the house. This was our very last meal together in his cottage. So I just kind of decided that no, he wasn't. No, you're not. It's fine. Classic M, fingers in the ears. And so I went into complete denial, because it was just someone else might have sod the house move. They might have said, absolutely not. And you told me that, let's put the brakes on. But I felt like we were too far in, and I didn't want to hear that. And also, yeah.
This is a good place to take a break, and thank you guys so much for sort of sharing this and the unfolding of your relationship, and sort of starting to kind of look at that, what you were saying about that bit of a bit of denial there, because actually it was hard to hear. And I know, so Mandy, you've got a question. Would you want to?
I just had a couple of things that came up. One, I think we tend to sort of take a lot of this on ourselves, but when you love someone, and especially in the situation that you were, it's very difficult to have rational boundaries about, someone's drinking.
Yeah.
I wondered what you were saying, that like sort of alcohol was a bonding thing for you, and you felt it was quite a positive thing. And I wondered, from Dave's perspective, what, did you feel like this was a good thing that you were bonding, or was this just like, an enabling thing? Because I know for me, I definitely was like, oh, thank God, rather than what my husband saw in our drinking. So
is that to Dave?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of might not answer the question as you've asked it, but I feel for me, I kind of knew Em wasn't a big drinker, and I thought that might help me, because when you see someone and they love a drink, you encourage each other and you feed it, and your whole relationship becomes the liquid relationship. For me, because Em wasn't a big drinker, I actually thought, well, that'd be really good for me. That helped me calm down and whatever. But what I found myself doing is feeding her in the end. And you know, the first few months we went through together, she had cancer, you know, and that wasn't like I thought to myself then, right, I'm going to absolutely stop drinking now. I didn't, you know, and it wasn't even I mean, I remember one time, and I'm being absolutely honest, and I feel awful for saying it, but I remember I had to get a bus to Parkside Hospital in Wimbledon because I just was too still drunk from the night before. And I went into the chemo ward, and Em's sitting there in her chair, ready with her cold cap on. And I was like, what am I doing? She's struggling to stay alive, and I'm killing myself. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't even bear to kiss her in case she smelled alcohol on my breath, you know. And it was just things like that. I thought to myself, what am I doing? But I still,
I had no idea.
Pardon?
I had no idea. I mean, I just.
I know, but it was the internal feelings of me. Why can't I stop? Why can't I do something about this? And that's the illness of it, you know. I just, even though we were going through that, I just couldn't seem to do anything about it. And when I sold my house, I thought, right, I'll have to do something about it then, because it's a new start for us and whatever. And I didn't. I made you drink more.
Yeah,
Our weekends away were literally a blur because we would start lunchtime and many time, and that in some part was fun, wasn't it? You know, our weekends away from the kids, and that was like a holiday for us, you know.
Yeah, but it wasn't reality. And one thing as you're talking that I'm remembering is that I carried on being in denial, in that because you were, I always said I'd lose you every night, wouldn't I? I'd kind of, you know, you'd disappear and that would be just horrendous. But every day, and I guess that's where the functioning side comes in, and it confused me because Dave was so inherently sort of decent. So every day he'd sort of reset, and he'd get up and he'd go to work, and he would be attentive and hands-on at home. And so it was like, so I remember sort of thinking probably in that first year, okay, there's always something, maybe this is something I just need to somehow compartmentalize. He's amazing in so many ways, I'm just going to have to adapt around this, you know. But then as time went on and, you know, things deteriorated, that became increasingly difficult. But I think that probably got me through the first couple of years. That continued, all right, I'll just manage this. And then I think probably my nature is to get into that quite codependent, micromanaging, thinking if I just do this and that, then, you know, and that's just not good. I became aware that I was living in a heightened state of stress again, you know, that adrenaline. But you always sort of said, you know, you're a control freak, and I might have a slightly controlling side, but it must have seemed more mad because I was scanning, you know, watching Dave fill the glass up to the brim and watching, and I didn't know how to sort of just let you be with it, but it was all internalized. And so then it would manifest itself as, I guess, as resentment or moods or, you know, kind of rejection. But it just became something that I bottled up so much. I just bottled it up. I didn't know where to begin with it. It's too enormous.
Because part of it, which I think some of the guys on here will relate to, is that you didn't want to shame me in front of your family and that, did you? You didn't want them to know the extent.
I was terrified of them knowing, because they'd seen me go through so much with the children's dad. I mean, I'd put them through so much. I'd put my family and loved ones through hell because of the hell I went through, because I was the center of drama for so many years, and Jeremy Kyle kind of situations, real drama. And then Dave came along, and this stable man, this hardworking guy, you know, this down-to-earth bloke, you know. And I just was terrified of them judging him, and then him becoming you know, because ultimately your loved one, they were protective of me. So the merest whiff of something possibly that they could start to, especially with my family, you know. But I felt very, very protective. I opened up to probably more peripheral people who were just gonna listen and then get on with their life, but not my closest, nearest and dearest.
Mm.
And then, of course, the kids started to really, you know, comment and notice.
So I was going to say, Em,
Yeah.
so, you know, you're talking about this, you know, on the denial and the kind of, we sort of talk about secrecy, and, you know, when it's in the our secrets keep us sick, don't we? We
Yeah.
sort of, that's a
Yeah.
well-known kind of phrase. And I just was going to say, when did you what did you ever say it to Dave, and what was the process of actually this becoming visible even to you and the catalyst for
It was
change?
a really difficult one, and I'm glad, you know, that my kids probably won't ever see this conversation, because the children were such a source of tension anyway. I don't think Dave will mind me saying, in that it was such a huge adjustment for him to kind of suddenly be stepdad to triplets who are, you know, very demanding, and then a kind of adolescent boy who was kind of withdrawn and adjusting to him. And I think so that whole conversation was a hot topic, anything to do with us and him, you know, step parenting and my parenting versus his. So there was this whole tense topic. And then there came a point where, yeah, I suppose Dave might have found it difficult for me to say, look, you know, this is affecting the kids. I don't know how much you were willing to hear that in those early years, really, because I think you were struggling with what you were adjusting to.
I think
it was a
I had
real
so much
issue.
going on in my own head with everything. I knew I was drinking more. I mean, I think back to some of the times, I don't know how you didn't kick me out, you know. I drank a box of wine in 2 hours when she took the kitchen apart, and I cooked roast pork, and when she come back, I'd eat all the crackling off the top. And it was like just a dead rat on the plate, you know.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I didn't twig.
Yeah, you must have it, and my eyes were all over the place.
I did, but I think and it wasn't until my eldest son, who's, you know, 7, he's nearly 17 now, but like I said, he sort of was much more aware of what had gone on in my past relationship. But there was a point, I remember never forget him saying, "Mum, it's just like having Papa back. It's just like Papa being here." And that was kind of like, no, because I fought so hard to get out of what had become a very damaging very, very sort of volatile, damaging, traumatic situation. And that doesn't mean that he's, you know, it's never black and white, but, you know, become an unlivable situation. And so to hear that, I just felt absolutely wretched. But I also felt trapped, but it wasn't like I ever wanted to get away from Dave, because I wanted to be with him more than anything. But the situation had trapped me, because I didn't ever believe in a million years that he would stop. I didn't feel that he wanted to stop. You know, moderation was something that I was like, I don't understand. Why can't you? What? Look, just, you know, let's have smaller glasses, or let's just make that. There was no concept of.
But I'll jump in here, and that's where I think you didn't really understand.
No.
Why you can't do that.
No, not at all. No.
And in a way that rolled me up a little bit more. It's because I felt so alone, so on an island, that with this thing that I couldn't stop, and I was drinking more and we were arguing more. I think I probably slept one night a week in our bed. We had this event to go to in the morning. It was a really important talk you were doing. And I got in the cab, and the bloke just undone his window straight away, you know, and it's like, I stayed up. Why did I have to have that extra bottle of wine? Why couldn't I just go to bed early and whatever? And I just think, what helped me though, and it's important for others to hear this, is you never ever told me to stop. You never ever said to me, you never gave me an ultimatum. You never said to me, unless you do this, I will do this and whatever. And for me, that was saving grace, because it took for me to look at you one day. I was literally heartbroken, and that's when I knew I had to do something about it. Is because you never ever put me under pressure. And I always say that to people, that, you know, ultimatums don't work, because for me, it would make me want to drink more. I'll go like, F you, I'm not being told what to do. I work for myself, no one tells you what to do. Pure arrogance in that. But equally, it wouldn't have worked. Any other guys got?
Yeah, Lisa. What would you like to say?
I'm just, I really feel a bit emotional with this chat, because it's bringing back a lot of memories, and I can feel. I just want to speak to Em, I suppose, really, about your feelings at the time when Dave was drinking, and you're thinking like, oh my God, not again, and your son's saying that to you. Did you? I've just been there. I'm proper feeling it. Sorry. Did you try and seek help from anywhere, or did you try and speak to Dave even about it, and what was his response?
I think there came a point where he and I, it was the row. I mean, I was just before I came on, I thought I went back because it got to the point where I used to email him after the rows to kind of, that was the way we started to communicate. And so just before I came on, I was looking back at some of those. It was really difficult to read, you know, absolute. I used to write lists of all the things he'd said to me in those awful moments, and then he would read them the next day and not remember. And then I think we were so caught up with our energy with just trying to get on and heal. You'd heal from some horrible argument, and then life had to go on. It was like, and we didn't ever have the stopping conversation, did we? But what I did start doing was Googling, you know, I did start kind of awful, kind of like Mumsnet, you know, you only have to type in "my husband drinks too much and I don't know what to do," and the forums that come up, and they're normally pretty crude and kind of kick him out, change the locks. And it was never, but I was desperate for some kind of glimmer of hope. I wanted to read a thread that showed me that things could change, that somehow, like I said, I never imagined him stopping, that he would magically learn one day to moderate and become a sort of regular drinker. And there were, like I said, I would talk to a handful of friends that I knew wouldn't just permanently judge him forevermore, who and there was everyone said the same thing: he's got to stop, and you know, my best friend Mel, you know, and they used to have your own chats, and she'd say, look, can't have this drama again. You can't have this level of drama. And that was the thing that was, I think, maybe, you know, 2-3 years in, where suddenly we'd become that couple that were rowing in front of the neighbours, you know, me storming out of a restaurant in tears. We'd become that couple, and that's that, you know, we've all been there, and that isn't what we were. And it was like, God, we were deteriorating pretty quickly. And I was worn out with trying to protect the kids, trying to be loyal to Dave because I loved him, and ultimately I never, you know, sober Dave, literally sober Dave, I respected so much as a human being and as a husband. So it was very, very confusing, you know, and it was really just a night. It was every single night, you know, from 8-9 o'clock. That's when the trouble would start. So it was quite an exhausting time.
Somebody had just said on the chat about the mood swings, and I'm guessing that there were some mood swings, and I'm feeling it because I know myself how I used to tiptoe around trying to make everything all right. So because my husband was a stepdad as well, and anything that we ever spoke about with the kids was, it would just cause an argument. I knew it was. So it's that feeling of trying to make everything all right, not make said Dave unhappy, but also keep your kids happy at the same time.
I know.
Just so...
I know. And if that's your nature anyway, like my nature is, you know, is to kind of expend a lot of energy on and doing that kind of, and it's, you know, something I'm trying to work on, but it doesn't come naturally. My natural way is just want, even that, you know, very days ago, you know, I just want everything to be okay, and micromanaging 5 other bodies, the people you love most in the world, all very different, all with different needs. So, you know, and I think the drink, you know, also it makes you selfish, doesn't it? Because you're just absorbed in your own physical feelings, your own remorse, your own. So, you know, Dave, yeah, and I was never scared of him physically, but I just knew that once the issue started in an evening, all I could hope for was that he would fall asleep. That's all I could. I'm
just wondering, William, you might be able to help this one. So I would drink secretly. I would probably hide a couple of bottles of wine somewhere and then pretend that I've got 1 bottle and a few beers. And I used to drink a bottle of wine in the time I'd have a shower. So I would literally get the bottle and down the whole bottle in one, have a shower, come out and pretend that I hadn't drank it. And then I would go, and this was what you hated, darling, wasn't it? That because I'd have a really big wine glass and I used to fill it up to the top and drink it like milk. And what happened, William, was within an hour, my mood changed that dramatically that I used to, so say the kids were like really behaving, I used to turn from someone that could be quite relaxed, just literally like a madman, wouldn't I? And that's what you used to dread, because
horrible.
I lost the plot, you know, completely lost the plot every night.
Weekends, but you know, Friday I'd get home from work, you'd get home from work. There was a phase where you were having therapy on a Friday evening, and of course Friday, now the kids are all on their screens, but at that point 2-3 years ago there was much more family time and all wanting to have movie night, you know, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and it, without fail, it was just horrific, you know. It was,
but that was a proper binge, wasn't it? But William, what is that like? Because I used to drink so quickly. Can you tell us the science behind that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few points there. That the effect on emotion. So alcohol anaesthetizes very quickly or sedates those parts of the brain that regulate emotion. So if, like for most normal people, say your kids are causing a racket in the background, it might cause irritation, but your brain very then quickly kicks in and negates the emotion to stop it getting out of hand. But when those parts of your brain are anaesthetized or sedated, they don't work properly. So little tiny things just fly out of all proportion. Anger's a common one, and this maybe brings us on to a separate point about how alcohol makes you feel, because when you drink, so alcohol is a very powerful sedative, and your brain seeks to counter it by becoming overly sensitive so it can work while heavily sedated under alcohol. But then when the alcohol wears off, you start to feel overly sensitized, and that leads to, in small doses, sort of anxiety, but in greater doses, full-blown depression and the shakes and all the rest of it. So the other point there is your brain is used to countering a specific amount. So like if you, for example, if you're drinking a couple of bottles of spirits a night, that first spike in alcohol blood level is the message to your brain that, you know, another 2 bottles of spirits are coming. So it's starting to recalibrate. If you then try and stop and cut down, all that happens is you start to feel really anxious and nervous and unpleasant. So it's really, really difficult to cut down or moderate your drinking. If you're used to drinking at a certain level, it's virtually impossible to cut down because you start feeling really anxious. You get that withdrawal, and the withdrawal is a really horrible feeling, and the natural tendency is to sedate it, not to just let it go.
yeah.
So the problem is when that starts to kick in, you're already feeling kind of anxious. And then if the kids kick up in the background, for example, and then you've got a bottle of wine inside you anaesthetizing those parts of your brain that should regulate your emotion, it's a recipe for disaster, and your emotions just fly. And for me personally, that's one of the very damaging myths about alcohol, is that because it releases or anesthetizes your inhibitions, people think that when you're drunk, that's the real you. So if you get angry and start having a go at someone, because this used to happen with me and my wife, I'd have an argument with her and I wouldn't remember it.
Yeah.
And she'd get very upset and she'd say, yeah, but that's the real you. That's what you're thinking. And with the alcohol, you're uninhibited enough to say it. But that's actually completely incorrect. Alcohol stops your brain working as it should be. The drunken you is not the real you at all.
It's comforting in a way. That's comforting to know, isn't it, when you think of the lows, you know, some of the lows.
Yeah.
I think it is, because I think for a lot of people, all you perceive is someone who's doing this thing over and over again that's hugely damaging, and sort of turns them into a monster. But actually realizing that it is not them at all, it's the drug that they've become addicted to. And I suppose the living proof of that, and probably another topic to come into, how did you, because all this is new to me, hearing this story, but so Dave, how did you get from where you were there to where you are now?
Well, I had a bit of a low point. It was over, you know, typical family argument over the PS4 thing, and I ended up storming out. I got in my car, drove to Eastbourne early in the morning, parked up, and I went straight to the pub. I was in the pub 12 hours, bought a bottle of vodka from the off license, and then sat on the beach thinking it'd be great to sleep on the beach. I did that for 4 days. I came back, I was really ill. We were literally weren't we? We were at absolute breaking point. Went to the doctors. I was in there for over an hour, actually, saw the doctor. And then I gradually slipped into the drinking thing again. and we were fractured, weren't we? We were leading up to Christmas. I was in a really, really bad way. I looked ill. I just couldn't do it. And then I was doing my second year of a counselling course then. I was failing my homework. It was just, everything was going to ruin. Came into the office where I am now, and she looked at me and she said, I can't do this anymore. And as she walked away, I just looked through the glass in the house, and she was just like this. And it was like a trigger for me. It was like, what am I doing to this poor person? I fell in love with this person, and this is what it's come to. And it wasn't long after that I just, our neighbour Piers didn't he sent me a text, how do you fancy giving up drink for 3 months? In the meantime, Em had been saying, oh, Piers isn't drinking, he looks so fabulous. Also, blah, blah, up the road hasn't had a drink for a while, he looks great. And it's almost like a subliminal little message of, oh my God, I know you never give up drinking, but I wish you would. And on the 7th of January, I just said to Em, I'm not drinking anymore. And that's it. And I think it's pure power of the mind for me.
But I think also, and I've said this to Dave a lot, in some ways I feel like I've got away as awful as those years were because of the very, I think, unusual way that Dave has just managed to, I think he's in the minority from what I understand, maybe that just stopping quite like that and with no sort of wavering. I feel like, God, I've got off quite lightly. You know, I know everything's relative, but, you know, I haven't had that agony of relapse because I do not know. I mean, you know, if that was a factor at the moment, I really, really don't know what that would mean. You know, it was hard enough, you know. So I feel like I'm incredibly grateful and that you found that strength, and it was obviously the right time for you, and that therefore the healing was quite rapid for us because, you know, and then also, you know, like a week after he stopped, I was re-diagnosed again for the 3rd time. So, you know, that kind of brought everything else. That was another issue. Very legitimate reason for Dave probably to then start again, but he didn't. So, you know, that meant that we joined forces very strongly because he immediately went back into that caring role for me. But I think I managed to let go of the resentment quite easily, didn't I? Because the relief was so great.
But then that helped my sobriety, because if you'd have held on to that, it would have been really hard for me. But you lovingly let go, and we moved on really quickly. We went through your treatment. It was another traumatic time, wasn't it? And then you had some of your lung removed. She had some of her lung removed and then ran a 10K a month later. Put 2 bras on. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. She's just a powerhouse. Simon, I'm very aware, mate, that we've been 40 minutes and I want you to say your bit.
Yeah, my ADHD's kicking in. I keep looking at the pigeons out the window. Oh, there goes another one. Yeah, no,
Dan, what was Michelle like?
Sorry?
I was just going to ask you about what Michelle was like when you was at your worst drinking. Did you talk about it?
The stories, obviously your story is really touching, and the fact that Dave managed spontaneous sobriety is extremely rare, like Em said. And I only know 4 or 5 people who've done that. Yet, I suppose when you think about it as well, it is just a case of that strength of mind to just say, I'm not drinking, it's over, that's the end of it. But for me and most of us, it wasn't as simple as that. But yeah, I did an interview with Michelle, my wife, which is on my YouTube channel, and she said the first thing she thought when I said, that's it, I'm quitting, was like, here we go again, it's not going to happen. You know, and so much of what you're saying, you know, what you said just rang true in terms of the way it was damaging our relationship, particularly the mood swings. And I hate even thinking back on it, but how I was with my son, and I would like shoo him out of the room. You know, I love him to pieces, and I was totally putting alcohol in front of my relationship with him. And you know, but then, you know, here from the flip side, how it's all changed now, and life is so much better. So it'd be nice to hear a bit more of you guys talking about. My question for Em really was, what are the big changes you've seen since Dave's quit? Like, here's some good stuff.
Oh, I mean, there's so much good stuff. Obviously, you know, last year was a sort of challenging year, but it was also a hugely positive year. Once I knew personally that my cancer was there was a really strong plan, and that, you know, I was going to end the year hopefully back in remission, which I did, which was, and then just seeing Dave, I think we just, you know, we have a lot of issues within the house. There's lots of ongoing challenges, like there are for all of us, you know, that kind of create a lot of stress in our life. But I think we're that incredible team again. I mean, you know, something worth saying is that I felt pissed off at certain points in those early months of, like, God, you know, I felt cheated. I had to adapt to that side of our relationship being gone forever. And I felt cross that, why couldn't he just bloody moderate? You know, again, not understanding the disease of alcoholism. But I felt like, oh, we're never going to, and I know that's a very common thing, we're never going to have that holiday drink together. We're never going to, you know, all of those things, cozy pub by the fire with a glass of red wine, a bottle of red wine. And then also one really important thing I think to say, and I will get onto the positives because there are lots of positives, is that I remember also halfway through last year having this, it suddenly hit me, and you touched on this at the very beginning, but like, oh my God, you know, this man, as far as I knew, fell head over heels in love with me and expressed it in the most unbelievably romantic, consistent, lovely way. And that I could write practically the sonnets that used to come streaming through every night at 10, 11, 12 o'clock from Dave in those early months before we lived together. And it was this horrible realization sort of a few months into his sobriety of, he was pissed. He was pissed through all of that. And what does that mean? And is he going to wake up at some point any day now and look at me as a sober man and think, God, actually, no, this isn't right for me. So it's triggered a bit of insecurity in me in a way.
And trust issues maybe as well and stuff like that.
Yeah. And just
how much of this was true? Is it all just one big...
Oh my God, yeah, like he just was pissed. And therefore, yeah, this woman came along, she wasn't well, and he was the hero, and it gave him a bit of a focus and a bit of an action. Yeah, so that was a kind of, I had to get my head around that. And I guess I might have been I needed some verbal reassurance. We had a big chat about that, I think. And also typical Dave, he was so honest. He was like, yeah, well, I had to ask myself that as well. You know, he doesn't ever just say what you want to hear. You know, he's not like, don't we? So you're always going to get the truth, which is obviously when that's a positive thing. But it was like, yeah. So I mean, obviously, just the feeling of I've been able to exhale. You know, I've been able to just loosen some of that grip of. But tension and micromanaging and you know, and
I think one of them as well was that when Em used to go out with her friends for a drink and I used to stay in to look after her children, she would come in quite sober and I'd be blotto. But I thought I was okay. I thought I was doing a good job and they were in bed and stuff like that. But for Em to go out and worry about how pissed I was when she got in is awful, isn't it?
My biggest fear was that, you know, it took a while for you and, you know, my eldest son, you know, it wasn't the easiest start. And I had this terrible kind of protective, I'm very, you know, very, very protective part of me that felt, you know, yeah, you know, what happens if anything happens to me, and Dave's drunk and Jake's 18 and he boots him out of that. You know, I used to come up with all these kind of scenarios if I can't die, you know, like, and people used to say to me, but people maybe who've never experienced, you know, cancer, because you know, people sometimes clumsily say things not meaning to, but that's when I was going through my kind of one of my many dark periods of anxiety, worrying about not being here. Friends with certain people would say, well, you've got Dave now, almost like, it doesn't matter, it's all right because you're not on your own, and if anything happens to you, the kids have got Dave. And I remember that wasn't a straightforward feeling, and even now obviously I don't want to go anywhere, but there were those years where I think, but what a nightmare that would be. Even though his intentions would be honourable and he's so decent and good, the booze would, how would he cope? He would, you know, so yeah, that was, but yeah, so it's amazing to feel those concerns just drift away, and we just deal with normal relationship woes now, don't we? Like
it's important to know that it doesn't all get better when you stop drinking. You've still got life's problems, but at least at night when we go to bed we talk about them, where before you used to go to bed and I've either got my mouth open snoring, or I stay up and you find me on the sofa at 3 a.m. We never used to communicate, did we? Because the kids were a lot harder work then. But Lisa, is this sounding more and more like what you were dealing with back then?
Yeah, definitely. I think I couldn't stay at that time, and I think my husband was in massive denial about his drinking. He's sober now. We're not together. Long story, whole other podcast, whatever. But I found that I covered up a lot of his drinking to the kids and to everybody else. But what I found that did is I found that I was enabling his drinking a lot more. So he thought it was all right. So he'd do stupid things. I would cover it up. Then we'd have an issue with what I'd done. And that would take everything away from the fact that he'd been drinking so much. So my own issue with drinking was binge drinking. So I used to go out, get pissed with my mates and tell them what a pisshead my husband were. I was like, I know Alex said before on here, she was like, you did really well to not do a kind of, if you can't beat them, join them.
No, but you know, I do, it's a fun, but I definitely sort of have had phases where I've drunk a lot more than I ever used to, because it was such a, you know, I've had to look at that and think, God, because it just became that daily habit to always, you know. But yeah, exactly. I'm naturally a lightweight, thank goodness. So, you know, which is
it's
very,
easier,
very
I think, sometimes, isn't it, to try. Sorry, it broke up on me then. It's easier, I think, sometimes. So I found it easier to try and drink, because I think, oh, he's going to get really pissed, and then he's going to drive me mad, and then and I used to kind of drink to catch up with him, or and it just didn't work, and you know, we're not together. And that's how it worked for us. But I think it's amazing that you have got through it. But I think people do have to be conscious of enabling the partner as well, and covering it up. Yeah. Because sometimes they can't be helped. You know, if Dave didn't want to help himself, I do wonder this, like, what would you have done?
I know. I think we would have, you know, it was intensifying the issues, the drama, the kind of scenes, you know, it was all it was just upping quite quickly. And I think something would have broken, whether Dave, I mean, I think you could have either had a breakdown, you know, I think, or been unwell, or something. We wouldn't have been able to continue. I mean, and the repercussions there would have just, don't bear thinking about.
I mean, I had a choice, and my choice was living in a dodgy old bedsit up the road and drinking myself into the ground, or grabbing hold of the situation. And I can just only say that people think there's nothing, when they're in that position of drinking the amount I was drinking, you can't see anything outside drinking because you think that's your life. But there's everything outside drinking. You know, it's the opposite of what people think. And once you stop, I always say it's like when you drink, you're like looking through life through a straw. It's so narrow, but then when you give up, it's like a Hubble telescope, and you see so much life. And you guys here, I didn't know you when I was drinking. All the amazing people I've met through the sober circles. I always say them, don't I? They're just the most wonderful, humblest, genuine people, because we've all got over this thing, and I just love so many people now. And my life is improved. My health is back to normal. I'm not on a platform here saying praise the Lord.
No, but what's been one of the most wonderful bits for me has been watching Dave sort of blossom and find his way, and the kind of layers have all come off, and it's just such a joy to witness, you know, and to know that he's now a part of such an incredible community, and there's such mutual kind of care and support and understanding, and it's amazing.
And you probably never knew the real. Like, when did you start drinking, Dave? How old were you?
14.
Yeah, just turned 14.
So you'd probably never known the actual authentic version of you.
No, and I've gone through stages as well, because through my teens and 20s, I thought that my drinking was normal, and it probably was, you know, going out the weekends, getting drunk with your mates and that. But it's when I started going to the local pub, I become a regular, and I started doing sessions in the pub, nicknamed Glugs, because I used to neck them like the clappers. Then I moved into the house and started drinking indoors, because the pub was too far away, and that's where I got myself in a lot of trouble, because I used to stock up. Like weekends was a joke. I used to finish work Friday, go to the supermarket, have a whole trolley full of booze, vodka, Stellas, wine. I'd go in Friday afternoon, come out Monday morning, I wouldn't talk to anyone. Literally, it was like I'd lock myself in. So in another way, I don't even know whether I'd be alive now, because the amount I was consuming was ridiculous. A litre of vodka a night, I used to have 4 Stellas to start. And sometimes I would be looking around after the litre thinking I want more. I was paralytic. I woke up on the stairs once like that, all my face, like, well, I went like that onto the stairs and woke up in the morning. I mean, you can't sustain that. So,
do you know, it's so lovely that you can sort of come and share the transformative journey and the healing, you know, the sort of the healing and the openness. And it's testament, because, you know, there's so many things in there, isn't there? There's the fact that, you know, drinking is normalized in society. It is the go-to for stress relief. It's not called out in terms of how carcinogenic it is. You had all the kids, you had this step parent situation. It's like, there's a lot. And to hear your journey are just really inspiring, and testament to both of you, you know, your love, your bravery, your honesty, your guts, you know. It's beautiful. So
I think for whatever reason, I think we both.
I've got Mandy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go on.
Mandy, you've had your hands up for ages.
No, it's just we've had some nice comments in the Facebook group, so I just wanted to read a few of those. Catherine says, love this chat so much, watching my other half, who is coming up to 2 years sober. Oh, she's watching with her other half.
Amazing.
Oh, lovely.
5 years together and feel like a dream team. Always good to look back at what life was like before his sober days. Thank you all for doing. Fingers crossed this can help so we can talk about addiction easily. And she said, my other half used to do this, so hiding his drinking and etc. I have no idea how we got him to rehab, other than that he was so ready, sending lots of love. Someone said, it's so nice to hear these things, because I've said some terrible things whilst I was drunk, and it's awful to think that was the real me. And so William's kind of like understanding of that. So there's some nice chats going on between people. It's tricky. I've been a drinker and have just stopped. Hubby is a drinker. I would never confront him, as no, this would go nowhere. But you can't change someone, but doesn't stop you worrying. Yeah, and I think there's something in this. You know, if you start looking into, perhaps if people are listening to this and they're like hearing things. Because, you know, we talk about alcohol abuse and abusive relationships, and there's a lot of similarities in terms of that. You know, you're thinking they're going to change, you come back and they're still acting in the same way, and that kind of cycle that people get into. So, you know, if people want to sort of look into the drama triangle and how people interact together, that's a really interesting model that might help people to sort of see how these things sit. Like, are you the victim? Are you the perpetrator? I can't remember the third one. But, you know, how does
Rescuer,
you know,
rescuer.
And the fact that we switch between these roles all the time. And I think when you can identify that, you can take a bit of distance and go, okay, like, without shame or blame, this is where we sit with this, and how can I, you know, what's my limit too, you know, because it's such a difficult one between loving someone through addiction and having a boundary when enough is enough, you know. And I think that's what Lisa was saying too, you know, there's those, either way it's about what you can cope with. And I think it's really important for people to know that, you know, you can only do as much as you can do.
Yeah,
you know.
totally.
And also, you can't help someone who can't help themselves. And I think when you say enough's enough, when Em came into the office that day, she looked shattered. You know, I've seen her go through chemotherapy twice. I've seen her ill, and I thought, I'm making her ill here. And that was enough for me. I just feel so grateful that you stood by me, because if you hadn't have done, God knows where I'd be now. You know, you've really supported me. And when I saw that Tony Slattery documentary the other day, and I saw Mark, his partner, when you say, Mandy, about boundaries, he's been with him 37 years, and there were times he looked absolutely worn out and that. And it's a desperation. What can I do? I love this person so much, but I can't take it much longer, you know, and you have to make a choice.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting, because compared to other very obviously toxic, damaging relationships where, you know, if someone punches you around the face or has an affair, it's an obvious kind of, right, that's the end. But it's when it's kind of like a drip feed of confusing ups and downs and patterns, and it's like, and the mental confusion, because you get drawn into this messed up behavior as well. And I think that's almost, it's sort of agonizing plaster not quite being ripped off, of like, this is right but it's wrong, and it's right, you know, whereas and I think that's something as well, that's sometimes it's easier when there's just one big drama, you know.
But this is the difficulty with kind of early intervention in addiction, because it's like, you know, for so long, that's why people only kind of got help when they were rock bottom, you know, in any situation, because then it was like, well, it's all fucked now, so there's nowhere else to go, and to try and change this conversation and move it along and go, no, what's going on within this relationship, the way the kids are feeling, the way the wife's feeling, the way that I'm feeling, the way that, okay, it's all right the next morning, but by 5 o'clock it's not all right, and that kind of cycle, that's where the conversation needs to be, because you don't want people getting to
exactly sleeping on
I was wondering in this as well that I wonder, because this is probably for another session really, if there is a gender difference in terms of how women are behaving in relationships when their partner is drinking too much or is an alcoholic, and then for women who are the reasons that women are drinking as well, and that dynamic as well, and also the sort of the grey area, the spectrum of it as well, you know. And I think that, you know, something that we feel really passionately about is that kind of early intervention. Stop normalizing it, let's call bullshit, let's have a chat, you know, the real chats early on about male mental health, about depression, about all of the things that, you know, trauma, that are all contributing to that as well.
I think we can just mention here, Simon, you put a video out earlier as well about your own trauma, didn't you? It's on YouTube. If anyone wants to see it, how can they see this? Because it's brilliant. Fascinating. I
can share it in here in the Sober Sessions group.
I do that.
Yeah, I won't give any spoilers, just watch it. Get my views up.
So guys, I know we're coming to the end of this now. Is there any questions that anyone wants to ask me or Em or anyone else on the panel? Going to wrap it up soon.
I think you're both really brave. I just want to say that. I know how hard it must be for you to speak so honestly and openly, both of you as well. It must be hard, Dave, to listen to how hard found it at times, you know, when you love somebody so much, you don't want to hurt them. And I just think you're both really brave for
by some
this
miracle, I don't think we find it hard, because I think it's what gets us through with the kind of, somehow we found that compatibility between us both, and that we're both very similar, and that we, you know, incredible, amazing, fantastic communication. And then I think we just both, on our own individual paths with the challenges, health, addiction, we've both found that sharing and talking has been such a comfort and a growth tool. So somehow, by a fluke, it sort of works for us together, I think. So it's lovely, but it doesn't feel brave. it just feels like the right thing. I just want to get a chair and just to connect, because it's all about not feeling isolated and not feeling lost and alone, because there's nothing worse than lying awake in the middle of the night or whatever it is, or waiting at the bus and feeling completely on an island of your own fears and you know, and stuck situations.
And we've said, haven't we, if one person can get hope from a conversation, it's worth everything, you know.
Well, there's lots of comments in the chat saying thank you, an amazing chat and really inspiring, and you've helped me, and this has given me a message of hope and stuff like that.
So pleased.
You remind me,
link
when
up.
I was listening to you just spoke, you remind me of that song when I saw you, like, we found love in a hopeless place.
Oh,
that's a good one.
That you created,
that's
you
really
moved through, and you became hopeful, and you found your hope again, both of you, and it's so beautiful.
Thank you for saying that. I'm going to go and look at the lyrics of that song.
You'll definitely resonate with it.
It's been so lovely. Thank you.
I'm going to put a link on underneath this video for Al-Anon as well. So if there is anybody struggling or wants to talk, please put it in the group. You know, we're all here and we can all answer. I know there's going to be a lot of people at this time, especially with lockdown, feeling really, really isolated right now, with either their own drinking, the partner's drinking, and not knowing who to talk to. So I'll put that link on, and I know we'll all be about to answer questions as well.
And if anyone wants to reach out and message me as well, I'll answer any questions I can.
Thank you so much.
The great thing about this panel is that we've all got different skills, haven't we? We all come from different backgrounds. So just drop some comments in the group, and one of us will answer. You know, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
And hopefully, when this is over, we might do some lives on the road, mightn't we? Eh?
We're going on
the
tour.
road. Should we get a
road
bus?
show?
Yeah, tour
I've
bus.
got one.
Yeah.
I've got a bus.
Have you got one?
I want to come.
Yeah, we can.
Drive it.
Well, you're one of us now,
I've got an HGV license.
Sober Session
This is
Roadshow.
another time thing.
I'll tell you what, Kate, the Sober Session Roadshow, we could have a big speaker on the roof playing that song.
Yeah.
That can be our theme tune.
It has some amazing pom-pom decorations in it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh. Shall we wrap it up there, guys? Then?
Yeah, that was brilliant. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, darling, for coming on.
I'll see you in a minute.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
That's in the first no.
Catherine just says we'd love the roadshow ones. Yeah, I think we're going to try and do one for Birmingham first, aren't we? Because it's sort of halfway for everyone.
Midway.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you on Saturday.
Yeah.
See you on Saturday.
Right, lots of love.
Bye.
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 Stay safe.
There you go.
Woo!